okay? Just with regards to the takes or the issues that might have come up in your meeting, if that's okay. Thanks, Gemma.
Yeah, no worries. Just a few key takeaways from our conversation, which was a beautiful conversation. One of the things we said, we talked a little bit about the work of the UN and the role it plays in providing, I guess, a framework. And so all of these conferences with their agreed conclusions, they then need to be adopted to a local context. So one of the things is you're not going to find a one-size-fits-all model. So the challenges are global challenges, but the solutions we need to look at in our local level. So we talked a little bit about the role of the UN. We spoke quite a bit about hope and being beacons of hope, because it can be really easy to kind of see that you're not really making progress, or things are taking a long time, or it's hard to see change. And we also are, as a really important part of our role as justice, particularly in this day and age, to get beacons of hope, not only to each other in this group, but also to the wider community that we're ministering with and alongside. And we also talked about, I guess, the sense of commitment and the shared belonging that we feel as part of this justice network. And there was sharing around how it was a wonderful way to actually get a better understanding of the three events for those that hadn't been able to attend, but from an inside kind of perspective, and that we would be able to share that with other people in our network. So we very much felt it was, we're here tonight, but we can also share that with others that we've spoken with as well. Despina, was there anything else?
No, I think, Gemma, you covered it all.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
That's great, thank you indeed. Maureen, in your group, was it you who did some recording, or did somebody else take a note? Or you're on mute there, Maureen, I think.
Sorry, Brian, I was trying to take notes, but in taking the notes, I wrote them down, but I find it hard to read them now. But anyway, we had very good conversation. Some of them couldn't attend because it was during the night, and the place they couldn't, and then others had attended the water conference, bits and pieces of it. And at one point that came across was about states need to consider the needs of other states in relation to water, which wasn't a point made. Women and children are carrying the can a lot of the time, worrying about clean water, access to clean water, and it's only one of the heartaches of women on many issues of their lives, trying to meet the needs of their families. There's a question about a suggestion made that global cooperation is very important to meet global problems, and the possibility about the IPA. I can find it on. I forget a second here. I find it hard to go back over them anyway. The voice of those fearing reprisals when they attend the permanent forum, and there's a possibility there if IPA could have a role in having a voice for those kind of people at the United Nations with our status at the United Nations. And two people were actually attended the ERI, the Edmund Rice International Training, and they found it very, very helpful. While they didn't attend the sessions at the United Nations, they found that very good, because it was useful in understanding better the UN instruments and how powerless the UN or as an organization can be to force countries to take actions. But it's about maybe the IPA could actually have a role in that as a model how the justice context and the IPA might function when their countries are doing their VNRs. Maybe I might be able to focus more on that. I can. As a new justice contact person, Carrie found it very helpful because during COVID, when she was appointed as justice contact person, there was no framework for fitting all the bits and pieces together and getting a proper understanding. But now she has a better understanding and will be more proactive in attending sessions next year at the United Nations, one of the three, if there's an opportunity. Any of the others want to say anything, because I didn't get everything properly jotted down, and now I'm trying to catch up to myself. Anyone else in the group? Or
no, I think you covered everything.
Half covered. Yeah, okay.
I think you got most of it, Maureen. It sounds like you got, but
yes.
Actually, even just to say, I was in the third group, and we had about 7 people in that group, but the theme of training came up again, and advocacy and advocating and looking to the ERI because they seem to be expert in offering that training, whether it's online or in person in Geneva or wherever else. And it was also a case too, I think, that people felt that if they knew a little bit more, they're able to do a little bit more. And one of the things that was made that kind of came across quite clearly in our group was that there was an overlap in some of the issues, like obviously the issues that relate to women and children also relate to Indigenous peoples, and that there is a healthy overlap whereby you can actually strengthen a commitment follow where the commitment comes up 2 or 3 times across different conferences. There was some disappointment with the water conference, but there was also people's other experience, and not just IPA, but other work that they do where they felt that they could bring the actions and the learnings from other civil society groups to be able to create a greater impact in a kind of a collective impact. And I know Christopher in particular mentioned something like the civil disobedience movement. And there is a whole movement now around the ethics of disruption and how we might do so in a way that makes a difference and makes it matter and makes it hope, or makes it much more hopeful. Rupa had attended the Indigenous Forum and was very grateful to see that there were several Indigenous peoples who were having the opportunity to connect and create a whole new way of doing their business because they weren't alone. That conferences like this remove that isolation or reduce the impact of isolation. And the idea that there has to be somebody held accountable is a theme that runs throughout all conferences. Whether or not it follows through and that 100% is a different thing, but that there is an element of being accountable, but that the dialogue in and of itself is worthwhile and the commitments also. There is a certain cultivation of emerging trends and new decisions and new movements and going in new directions and new wisdoms and collective wisdoms, and where there are gaps, these are identified and that they might produce a different way or a new way of doing things. Another thing that came up was, and it was mentioned in the kind of greening the economy and the green economy, Indigenous people and the greening economy, which Maureen referenced when she was speaking. But those who attended and who work with the Indigenous people say, well, actually, you know, the green economy of the Indigenous people has been there for hundreds of years. That is there a long, long time. It's only now that it's kind of been named in a way that it now runs alongside sustainable development goals and other work that's ongoing, but that the Indigenous people have a significant role to play in greening the economy, although they, because of their difficulty in terms of maybe access to water, which Labania mentioned, their ability to safely farm is difficult. Their ability to live safely and have a healthy living is also impacted with greater difficulty. And then Maurice in our piece also mentioned that really, you know, to attend one of these conferences, if you're one of those with the lived experience who's spoken about, that needs to be celebrated, because it can be very, very difficult to travel, to arrive, to get a visa, to attend, to be there, to actually have your voice heard. So it should be the first point made that, you know, it's not just about those who find it easiest to travel and whatever. But so I think I kind of got most of it there, I think. But if I didn't, somebody might jump in and say, Brian, you left this bit out or left this bit out, or even if something, I'll just strike somebody. Thank you.
Yeah,
indeed.
Brian, just you reminded me of something there that Carrie had shared as well. Melissa Skinner, who's an Indigenous person herself, is working with them in the United States, and she was at all of the sessions of the Permanent Forum, and she felt more positive this year than other years, she said. So that's the point I wanted to make there, because I didn't feel a bit positive about it.
Okay, that can happen too. That's okay. Thanks indeed. All right, listen, I'm conscious of time too, and I'm determined to finish this at a time before it gets bright where Christopher is. I'm absolutely determined to do that. So don't tell me it's bright already now, Chris. Don't look out the window. It's not bright yet.
TikTok.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, maybe if you don't mind, Despina, I might call Despina in. Despina is our IPA representative at the United Nations and would have a greater handle and feeling on perhaps some of the background to the conferences, and might be in a different place to be able to speak to some of what we heard today. So Despina, maybe if you could undo your microphone.
Brian.
And if there's anything that struck you from anything you heard this morning or anything you'd like to add, we'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Well, yeah, two things, Brian, regarding what we heard today. There are the two sides of each topic that we are dealing with. There is the hope on one side, and then there is the frustration or disappointment at the other. That's always the case with the UN. Sometimes you feel hopeful, but then when it comes to the actual work, you feel somehow taken aback, like surprised why these things that were discussed, they didn't adapt anything at the local level, the governments, I mean, the national level. So that's always the case, but I think we need to keep our hopes up. We still need to keep working and keep doing what we are doing. You, as the justice contacts, are doing a wonderful work at the grassroots level, and it's always my intention to showcase your work here at the UN in every chance that we have, in every UN campaign or initiative that we can engage with, in order to be able to show your work. And you are the voice of the people that are voiceless at your level. So that's how I see things, and that's how we need to see always the UN sessions. As I shared in our group, you may not be able to see the impact right away. Right now, it takes time to see an actual difference, but that is not the case that discourage us. We need to keep doing and keep hope that something will change in the near or the long future, long-term future. So that's my suggestion to you all, my comment. If I may share some news with the group, Brian.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So the SDG Summit is coming up next September. It's a meeting of the governments trying to assess the progress of the SDGs. The IPA has a long history in working with SDGs as a framework, I mean. So I think that it will be an important opportunity for us to do something there. I don't know. I just I would really like to hear what you have to offer. Not right now, in within a month or so. If you have any idea, any suggestion how you can engage at your level. And something, an initiative relevant to the SDG Summit. We have a deep engagement with the SDGs, and I think it's an exceptional opportunity to showcase our work at the grassroots level. I don't know, maybe you decide to have a local campaign, or like hosting an event, an exhibition. I'm just sharing some ideas. It's up to you. If you would like to to plan something like that, we can do it together, of course. But I'm very open on hearing your side. On a similar note, we are also, as you know, members of the grassroots subcommittee of the NGO CSOC. So in that capacity, I will send out to you probably at the beginning of the next month of June. There is an initiative that we are planning to do. We will be inviting people, from all around the world, to share your experience in a short video, like 2 minutes video. It doesn't need to be long. Or if you prefer to share your thoughts in writing, in words, you can respond in that form as well. It's going to be like 4 questions. The best, the most important is, if you could deliver a message to this SDG Summit, what would your message be? Also, you might very well include your hopes for 2030, which is the supposedly end of the agenda for sustainable development. You can also share some current programs that you think that they are most successful in working to achieve one or more of the SDGs for 2030. So that's the context for for something that you will receive soon. I think it will be very important to, you always support that kind of campaigns with the videos, or even sharing your thoughts, testimonies in words. So I would really looking forward to seeing what you have to contribute to that as well. And one last point, Brian,
Sure.
I was offered the role of the chair of the Civil Society Forum for next year,
Super.
which I accepted, yes. And you all know how important this forum is for all NGOs around the world. It's our opportunity to talk to the UN and raise our voice and discuss with them. That's one of the most important aspects there. And we, as an IPA and as the SPINA, we have that option now, as me being the chair of the Civil Society Forum. As you know, the theme is on social justice and poverty. Poverty eradication is a goal with working, the IPA is working for many years on this goal. So in the long run, before, of course, Christmas, I will reach out to you. I'm still trying to form the subcommittee members, those that will support me here at the UN with my work. And we haven't decided yet the format of the Civil Society Forum, how many sessions, we need to be as much creative as possible, the speakers and things like that. It will be probably have videos like last year. So I think that this is a unique opportunity for the IPA and for you to show your work there. But again, I will reach out as soon as I have more on that. And that's all for me today, Brian.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Despina. And that's it's great to hear that news that you're chair of the Civil Society Forum, which is super news as we head towards our assembly, and for and the chance to input not just now but later on to around the UN GA that time around the SDGs, and absolutely we'll get our thinking caps on in order to think what we can do locally so that you can speak to it as around the time of the UNGA. Thanks again. Christopher, is there anything you'd like to add? I know you were part of the groups and you were you gave us some very rich sharing. Is there anything that you would like to add? And before we
I do have a few things. I'll be extremely brief. I know we're just at the end of our time here, but I did have a few points jotted down from my own experiences of attending the various UN events. As you all know, the three major UN events that we were focusing on over the last few months were the Commission on the Status of Women, the UN Water Conference, and the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Another opportunity that I had shared with the Justice Contacts, who many of you have participated in either virtually or in person, was the Edmund Rice International Training on Human Rights and Advocacy. As far as I can tell, this happens at least once a year. It was a 4-day/4-session event where people could participate in different time zones. So if you're interested in something like that, please let me know and I can keep an eye out for future opportunities, whether they be in person or virtual. The event is a really good opportunity to learn about human rights and advocacy, specifically from a partnership standpoint. Edmund Rice International is another organization that does similar work to ours. They share a rich history. There's a lot of opportunities for us to look for collaborative efforts between the two organizations. And so I think it's a really good chance to look at what others are doing in a similar field, similar work as our own. They often compare charity and advocacy as the two sides of the same coin. Charity being their word for kind of the direct intervention, the on the ground work, and then advocacy being a kind of more national or global oriented work, more long-term oriented. And we mentioned that this idea of partnerships is included within our own mission statement. So if you're interested in more opportunities like that, please let me know. At the Commission on the Status of Women, as was mentioned here earlier, the theme was on innovation and technological changes in education. Gemma spoke very poignantly about the harms that could potentially come from technologies that I think are often overlooked when looking at the opportunities. Another thing that I saw come up with that was also the challenges that come up with technology. One thing that I was glad to see mentioned many times, obviously the focus on developing countries was a large element when discussing the emerging technologies, as was the involvement of young girls in technological fields professionally. One thing that I was really glad to see mentioned was the mention of older persons and digital divides. Specifically, the access to information and communication for older persons who may not otherwise have access or proficiency with some of these technologies, which just led me to think these technologies can be important from a financial perspective, informationally, communicationally, vocationally, and even in instances of violence in order to reach out for resources and support. So it got me thinking about, and I extend this to the justice context, please think of what skills in technology you as justice contacts use all the time or would like to learn how to use, because I think that we can collectively come up with training opportunities in order to expand our own proficiencies in these fields. At the UN Water Conference, I learned that the word water comes up in the Laudato Si 47 times, meaning that it's obviously a really key subject area. According to the UN, 90% of all natural disasters are water related, and these are getting worse. 216 million refugees are expected to be displaced due to water related crises by 2050. The IPA is no stranger to these water-related catastrophes, as we have seen through a lot of the work happening in Australia and work happening in Pakistan, both of which can be found on our website. We've also seen in Slovakia, Ireland, and the United States that we're no strangers to working with refugees and migrants as well, and that crisis will only continue to get worse. So please consider the ways in which these global phenomena affect our local work in your local regions and how the IPA may be able to respond as a whole. That we don't only need to respond to these in our local context, we can respond in a global context as well. And then finally, regarding the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, I was glad to see a large focus specifically on Indigenous women and girls. The first point in the draft report specifically on Indigenous issues mentions alarm for the criminalization and killing of women who defend their rights and resources. I think that this was an incredibly important first point because it stood out to me that while I consider these very important issues, I very rarely feel that my life is in danger when I attend these meetings to speak on them. And yet the first point about Indigenous women was that there is a danger of death by speaking up for their rights. And I think that that is really crucial for us to look at how dangerous this work can be for Indigenous women and to use our own platform to really leverage our own voices to make as much of a change as possible. I was also really saddened to see that when it comes to the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, which we spoke about in this meeting here today, there's only a handful of countries that have not signed or ratified this convention. These are Sudan, Somalia, Iran, may not be as surprised. The United States is on that list. So I was very surprised to hear that and think that there's a lot that needs to be done on a national level. The Vatican, the Holy See, is the other. So my final point for you all to consider is to please consider the roles that we as national citizens should play within our own national context, and also we as people of faith, considering that the Vatican itself is one of the countries that has not ratified that. So please think about what our role as people of faith is in pushing forward these policies on a UN and national level. And those are my key takeaways. Thank you so much.
Super. A lot of very strong points there. Thanks, Christopher. And thankfully, we have left the recording on, so we will have them captured now. We're just coming up on 90 minutes, so without holding us any longer, I'm just going to offer the floor to Anne-Marie for a vote of thanks again. But from my own point of view, I just want to thank everybody for turning up and staying up or getting up early, whichever it was, but also to thank Gemma and Maureen in particular for lots of work in preparation for all of this today. There was a lot of kind of moving of feet below the water to try and make sure that we could make sure that it happened in a way that made it easy for everyone to attend. So thanks all again. Anne-Marie, I'll give it over to you there if you'd like to have the final word, and we'll close the meeting then. Thanks. You're on mute, Anne-Marie.
Thanks. In listening to the conversation we've just had, and when Despina mentioned about continue to be hopeful, you know, in our work, and it's a slow work, the work of changing systems. But I'm coming away from this conversation today very hopeful as we go into the 8th Assembly. And also, if we ever got a belief that interconnectedness is so important between the global and the local. And I think this conversation today has married the two, and all the different aspects of it. For that, I am very grateful. I'm very grateful to each one of you. I'm not going to take out any individuals thanking, because I think we were all in this together. But just one or two points that I took away. Well, most importantly is that interconnectedness between the local and the global, and that's what IPA is about. And also as a resource, Christopher referenced ERI. You know, from day one, you know, since the last assembly, I can say that ERI has been very much our partners, because we belong to the presentation family, and Christian Brothers, Presentation Brothers and Presentation Sisters. And when I began my journey, Lynn accompanied me to Geneva, where we engaged with Christian Brothers at one of the first conferences. Remember that, Lynn? And that was really opened up doors for me, and doors to all the other big organizations like the International Franciscans and the Christian Brothers. And our hope is COVID did kind of close down some networking and doors during that time, but Despina and I have often talked about, you know, our future work with Geneva, and also over the COVID time, so many presentation sisters, our members, joined in those courses. Human rights courses that Christopher was referencing, and we continue to do that. So hopefully now that, you know, we're free again, that our connections with Geneva and Christian Brothers and all those other bigger networks will continue. And just to mention again the summit that Despina spoke about, Despina, our congratulations. I have been aware of Despina having been appointed chair of the Civil Society Forum, which is really wonderful for IPA, because we always try to get into the United Nations, and that's what being chair of these groups enables us to do. So we go forward in hope in that. But also in September at the summit, Despina will be engaging in a big presentation working with Unanimate International. And just to say that. So I'm not going to go on, but just to say that again, I think this has been a wonderful event, and we go forward into the 8th Assembly with hope. And I with great gratitude for each of you, because we can only do it together. So there's a hymn, a song, but I won't sing it, but I thank my God each time I think of you. So thank you all very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
thanks,
Thanks,
thanks
everyone.
to everybody.
Thanks,
I'm just
everyone.
going to stop the recording.